Today is Tuesday, November 10th. What to know about promising results from one potential COVID-19 vaccine, and which officials say this could end up being a turning point in the pandemic. Also, we'll explain the new lawsuits from the Trump campaign challenging the results of the election. Plus, the future of Obamacare is now in the hands of the U.S. Supreme Court, a major milestone for a futuristic transportation system. And two athletes defy the odds and break barriers. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. We start today with one of the most promising developments yet in the COVID-19 vaccine race. Drug maker Pfizer says early analysis shows its vaccine candidate is more than 90% effective, meaning it worked to block or prevent new infections more than 90% of the time. That's far higher than the 50% bar set by the FDA. And if it turns out to hold true with additional data, it'll be even more effective than the typical flu vaccine. Even more good news, Pfizer said it did not see any serious safety concerns or side effects. But remember, it is still early, more research and analysis is needed, plus side effects could take 2 or 3 months to pop up. But for now, it's definitely promising. The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, called these results just extraordinary. Now Pfizer is on track to apply for emergency use approval from the FDA later this month, once it's collected 2 months' worth of data. To be clear, even if all goes well, authorities say it's unlikely any vaccine will arrive before the end of this year. Still, it's reason to be hopeful. A senior advisor with the World Health Organization says Pfizer's vaccine could fundamentally change the direction of this crisis by March. President Trump is questioning the timing of the announcement right after the election, but top Pfizer executives say science is leading their every decision, not politics. Of course, Pfizer's vaccine is one of 4 candidates already in huge final phase studies in the U.S. And as Stat News reports, the Pfizer vaccine uses the same technology and targets the same protein as other vaccines, so this could suggest the other vaccines might work well too. Stay tuned. By the way, we have more good news to share about the fight against COVID-19. The FDA just granted emergency use authorization to another coronavirus treatment. It's the Antibody treatment from Eli Lilly, meant to help people at risk for serious complications. Eli Lilly said it expects to have enough treatments to distribute it to 1 million people by the end of the year. President-elect Joe Biden unveiled his new COVID-19 task force. Specifically, he called it a transition advisory board. While Biden is getting ready for a transition into the White House, President Trump is launching new lawsuits. The Trump campaign and a conservative legal group are now asking judges to stop Michigan and Pennsylvania from certifying election results. Remember, states typically certify the final results weeks after Election Day. But the Trump campaign and their allies say finalizing the results this time should be put on hold due to fraud allegations in Michigan and limits on poll watchers in Pennsylvania. Specifically, the lawsuit in Pennsylvania says poll watchers were kept too far away from vote counters. It also says mail-in voters were given preferential treatment because they were notified about problems with their ballots and were allowed to fix them. The Trump campaign argues since in-person voters don't have that luxury as well, those mail-in ballots should be thrown out. State election officials say they followed all the laws. We checked, and the law in Pennsylvania and many other states does allow people to fix mail-in ballots by a certain deadline. The most common issues are because of signatures. Mail-in ballots require signatures, in-person ballots don't. Pennsylvania's Attorney General has called the lawsuit meritless. Then there's Michigan. A lawsuit there argues that Detroit elections officials counted ineligible absentee ballots and also did not let poll watchers close enough to watch the process. Michigan officials so far have not addressed the lawsuit specifically, but they have defended and praised the state's voting system many times in the last week. At this point, the Wall Street Journal cites election law experts who say Biden is leading in both states by margins that would be difficult to overcome in court. But of course, we'll keep you updated. More of Trump's closest allies in Congress are urging him to keep up the fight in court. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is now one of them, saying Trump is 100% within his rights to file legal challenges. And he says if Democrats feel confidently that there was no voter fraud, they shouldn't fear any extra scrutiny by the courts. Though many Democrats argue Trump is casting unnecessary doubt on America's democratic process. Meanwhile, U.S. Attorney General William Barr is now chiming in. He told federal prosecutors to go ahead and investigate election fraud if there are clear and credible allegations of issues that could impact the outcome of the election. Barr calls the old policy that told prosecutors to wait until votes were certified outdated. But hours after his memo went out, the Justice Department's top election crimes prosecutor quit in protest. So far, no word of a new federal investigation. President Trump fired his defense secretary, Mark Esper. This is the third defense secretary in the Trump administration to get the boot. But this time, it was not totally surprising. Esper has publicly disagreed with Trump on a couple of issues in recent months, and some reports had recently said he was thinking of resigning. President Trump tweeted, Christopher Miller, who's been the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, is taking over instead. All right, we have more news coming up, but first, a quick break, because this episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit, and it really does make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. HelloFresh cuts out stressful meal planning and grocery store trips, so you can get dinner on the table in just about 30 minutes. And the meals are fantastic. HelloFresh delivers fresh, high-quality, pre-portioned ingredients, so you can make meals that are delicious and nutritious. In fact, more than 90% of ingredients are sourced directly from growers to ensure peak flavor and ripeness. I'm always impressed with the seasonal recipes and the flavor of the meal. I recently made Italian garden veggie soup with kale, pearled couscous, and garlic bread. It would not be something my husband would typically go for, but we both loved it. I don't think we've ever had a meal from HelloFresh that we didn't like. And you have options when you sign up, like 20-minute meals, low-calorie, vegetarian, family-friendly recipes, and more. So go to HelloFresh.com/newsworthy90 and use code newsworthy90 to get $90 off, including free shipping. Again, that's HelloFresh.com/newsworthy90 and use that code newsworthy90 to get $90 off free shipping. All right, now back to the news. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court will begin to hear the most significant challenge to Obamacare yet. 21 Republican state officials brought the lawsuit to the highest court, hoping to get rid of the landmark Obama-era healthcare law for good. And the Trump administration endorsed the legal fight. Basically, the lawsuit points to when Congress got rid of the so-called individual mandate that had required most people to have health insurance or pay a penalty. Republicans say if that part of the law is invalid, then so is the rest of it. Democrats, though, disagree. They also say there's a lot at stake if the law is struck down. Without a replacement, millions of people could lose their health insurance and might not be guaranteed protections for pre-existing conditions. Though President Trump has said he's working on a replacement now that will address those issues. Either way, it will be up to justices to decide what's next for the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. Today's arguments will be live streamed online, but a decision is not expected until June. For the first time, a Hyperloop was tested with passengers on board. We've talked about Hyperloops before. They're basically vacuum tubes with pods that zip along at 600 plus miles per hour. Well, over the weekend, the company Virgin Hyperloop tested one out at its 500-meter test track in Nevada. The two passengers on board were the company's co-founder and its director of passenger experience. They both say all went well, and the ride was smoother than expected. This is a major milestone, and the idea is these pods will eventually haul humans and goods all over the globe. Virgin Hyperloop specifically is hoping to launch a 45-minute trip from Los Angeles to San Francisco, all without any emissions. But it's worth noting that's probably years, if not decades, away. That's because a lot more testing needs to be done to make sure this kind of travel is actually safe. Then they need approval and construction. Apple has another big reveal coming up only weeks after unveiling its new iPhones. The tech giant is holding a virtual event today that it's calling the, quote, One More Thing event. As USA Today reports, Apple will be showing off its new MacBook Air and MacBook Pro laptops. These will no longer be powered by computer chips made by Intel. Instead, Apple will use its own chips, and they'll be a lot like what's used in the company's iPhones and iPads. So CNET says the chips will let Apple computers run iPhone and iPad apps. That said, there's a lot of questions over how fast these will be. We'll get the full scoop today. Apple's virtual event is slated for 10 a.m. Pacific time, and you can stream it on the Apple website. So we have a couple athletic milestones to tell you about. We'll start with an incredible feat in the world of rock climbing. Emily Harrington has become the first woman to free climb El Capitan in a single day. If you're not familiar, El Capitan is a 3,000-foot granite wall in California's Yosemite National Park. It's a legendary climbing spot, and Harrington set out last Wednesday to make it to the top in less than 24 hours. She had ropes to catch her if she fell, but she was not using them to help her ascend the rock wall. It took her 21 hours, 13 minutes, and 51 seconds to get to the top. Before her, only 3 people have ever done it in less than 24 hours, and they were all men. And now to another impressive first. For the first time, someone with Down syndrome has completed the Ironman triathlon. An Ironman consists of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and full 26.2-mile marathon. They're all done back to back to back, so it's an exhausting race to say the least. On Saturday, 21-year-old Chris Nikic completed the race in Florida. He finished in 16 hours, 46 minutes, and 9 seconds, becoming the first person with Down syndrome to do this. And that's it for the main news today, but now it's time for Trivia Tuesday, when we ask a different trivia question every week. But first, a quick break to thank our sponsor, ButcherBox. So if you're like me, you're never sure which meats to buy at the grocery store to get the most for your money and to get high-quality, humanely raised meat. That's why I'm here to recommend ButcherBox. They make it easy because I click the order and it shows up right at my door, packed fresh and shipped frozen and vacuum sealed so it stays that way. They help ensure I'm never without something in the freezer to cook. Each box has 9 to 11 pounds of meat, and I love that I can either customize my box or go with one of theirs. And I can skip a box anytime. Here's the best part, though. I know that everything I get from ButcherBox is free of antibiotics and added hormones. And they have great options like 100% grass-fed and finished beef, free-range organic chicken, and nitrate-free bacon. With ButcherBox, you get the highest quality meat around for just $6 a meal. They even have free shipping nationwide except in Alaska and Hawaii. And right now, ButcherBox is offering new members a turkey for free in their first box. That's an entire turkey for free in your first box. Just go to butcherbox.com/newsworthy. That's butcherbox.com/newsworthy to grab that deal. Okay, so today's trivia question is, what was Google called before it was called Google? You can answer this week's question in our quiz posted to Instagram stories, so find and follow us on Instagram @NewsworthyPod to play along. As for last week's trivia question, how many U.S. presidents have been elected for a second term? The answer is 21. And it's worth noting, although 21 have been elected to a second term, only 14 have actually served a full 2 terms. The others either died in office, resigned, or assumed the role halfway through their first term after their predecessor died. Of course, there was one president who served more than 2 terms. That was President Franklin Roosevelt. He was in office for 12 years and 39 days until he died in 1945. But the 22nd Amendment was added to the Constitution in 1947, and that put a 2-term limit on the presidency. So from that point on, the presidency was capped at 8 years. One more interesting thing is, presidents can still serve 2 terms even if they are not back-to-back. So far, Grover Cleveland is the only president to have served non-consecutive terms. He did it back in the 1800s, losing re-election once, then running again later and winning. Shout out to Lainey, Emily, Avia, Trent, and everyone who played along on Instagram. All right, thank you so much for listening today, sharing the show, and making the newsworthy part of your daily routine. We'll be back with much more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.